Dr. Kyle Vorthak stepped off his ship onto the dusty ground of Kepler 442b. The human colony spread out before him like a strange puzzle. Small houses sat in neat rows. Gardens full of green plants grew between them. Children played in the streets, while adults worked on machines and talked to each other. It looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Vorthak was a xenobiologist for the Galactic Council. His job was to study new species and put them into the right groups. Every smart species in the galaxy followed the same rules. The strong ones became warriors. The weak ones became workers. The smart ones became leaders. It was always this way. But humans seemed different. For 3 months, his team had watched this colony from space. They saw farmers, teachers, shop owners, and mechanics. They saw people who fixed machines and people who grew food. But they never saw any warriors. This was impossible. Every species had warriors. How did humans protect themselves, Dr. Vorthak? A voice spoke behind him. He turned around. A human man walked toward him. The man was not very tall and looked to be middle-aged. He wore simple work clothes covered in dirt. His hands looked rough, from hard work. "I am Park Dae-ho," the man said with a smile. "Welcome to New Sol Colony. We are happy to meet you." Vorthak looked at his scanner. This human showed no signs of warrior training, no weapons, no muscle development from combat practice. His heart rate was calm. This was clearly a worker caste individual. "Thank you," Vorthak said. "I am here to study your people. The Galactic Council wants to understand human society." "Of course," Dae-ho said. "Please come to my home. My wife made tea. We can talk there." They walked through the colony streets. Vorthak watched everything carefully. He saw a woman teaching children to read. He saw an old man fixing a water pump. He saw young people working in the gardens. Everyone looked calm and happy. But where were the warriors? Dae-ho's house was small, but clean. His wife, a kind woman named Park Mi-young, brought them hot tea and small cakes. They sat at a wooden table near a window. "What work do you do?" Vorthak asked Dae-ho. "I am an agricultural engineer," Dae-ho said. "I help make the soil better for growing food. I also fix the machines that water the plants." "And your wife?" Mi-young teaches the children. She also helps sick people when the doctor is busy. Vorthak made notes on his tablet. These were clearly worker caste humans, but he still needed to find the warriors. "Where are your protectors?" he asked. Dae-ho looked confused. "Protectors?" "Your warriors, your soldiers, the ones who fight when enemies come." "Oh," Dae-ho said. He seemed to think about this. "We protect ourselves, but you are a farmer," Vorthak said. "Farmers do not fight. That is not how civilized species work." Dae-ho smiled. "Would you like to see my garden?" They went outside. Dae-ho showed Vorthak rows of vegetables and fruit trees. The alien was impressed. The humans had turned this harsh planet into a place where earth plants could grow. "This must take much time," Vorthak said. "Yes, but I enjoy it," Dae-ho said. "Growing things makes me happy. Creating life from nothing is wonderful." Suddenly, a loud sound filled the air. Warning bells rang from tall towers around the colony. People in the streets stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. Vorthak saw them first. 3 black ships dropping down from the clouds. They were Krillian raiders. The Krillians were known across the galaxy as brutal fighters. They attacked weak colonies to steal resources and take prisoners. "You must call your warriors," Vorthak said to Dae-ho. But Dae-ho was not running or looking scared. Instead, he seemed calm. "Excuse me for a moment," he said politely. Dae-ho walked into his house. Vorthak expected him to hide or call for help. Instead, the human came back out carrying a large weapon. It was a plasma rifle, the kind used by professional soldiers. "Where did you get that?" Vorthak asked, shocked. "I keep it under the kitchen table," Dae-ho said simply. He checked the weapon with quick, skilled movements. His hands knew exactly what to do. Around the colony, other humans were doing the same thing. The woman who had been teaching children now carried a heavy gun. The old man who fixed the water pump held a rocket launcher. The young people from the garden ran past carrying combat gear, but they were not panicking. They moved like trained soldiers. The Krillian ships landed in the center of the colony. Armored warriors poured out, ready to fight weak farmers and steal everything they could carry. The Krillians were professional fighters. They had done this many times before. What happened next made Vorthak question everything he knew about civilization. Humans formed a defensive line with military precision. Deho, the gentle farmer, took a position behind a wall and began firing with deadly accuracy. Mi Young, the teacher, coordinated a flanking movement while calling out tactical information. The Krillian raiders had expected to fight scared civilians. Instead, they faced organized resistance from people who knew exactly how to kill. The battle lasted only 10 minutes. When it was over, all the Krillian warriors were dead or captured. Not a single human had been seriously hurt. Vorthak watched, in amazement as the humans quickly cleaned up the battlefield. Deho helped carry wounded Krillians to the medical center. Mi Young went back to teaching her class as if nothing had happened. "I do not understand," Vorthak said when Deho returned. "What do you not understand?" Deho asked. He had put his weapon away and was brushing dirt off his work clothes. "You are a farmer. You grow food. You should not know how to fight like a warrior." Deho thought about this for a moment. "My father taught me to grow plants when I was young," he said. "He also taught me to use weapons. My mother taught me to read books. She also taught me to fight with my hands. But why? This is not normal." "On Earth, everyone learns both things," Deho said. "We learn to create, and we learn to destroy. We learn to build, and we learn to fight. This is just how humans are." Vorthak looked around the colony again. The children were back to playing in the streets. The gardens were still green and beautiful. Everything looked peaceful again. But now he knew the truth. These were not helpless civilians. These were warriors who happened to have other jobs. "In my report," Vorthak said slowly, "how should I classify your people?" Deho smiled. "We are farmers and fighters. We are teachers and warriors. We are builders and destroyers. We are whatever we need to be." That night, Vorthak sat in his ship writing his first report to the Galactic Council. He had studied many species, but humans were different from all of them. Every other species had clear groups. Warriors fought, workers worked, leaders led. But humans seemed to be all of these things at the same time. How was this possible? How could a species function when everyone was trained to kill? He needed to study more human colonies. He needed to understand how a civilization could work when every civilian was also a potential killer. Vorthak looked out his window at the peaceful colony below. Lights glowed in the houses where families shared dinner together. But he now knew that in every house weapons waited under kitchen tables. The humans had created something that should not exist according to every rule of galactic civilization. They had built a society where the line between protector and protected did not exist. This discovery would change everything the Galactic Council knew about how intelligent species could organize themselves. But first, he needed to learn more. 2 weeks later, Dr. Vorthak received new orders from the Galactic Council. His report about the new Sol colony had confused the council leaders. They wanted him to study more human settlements to understand this strange species better. The council assigned him a guide. Captain Ko Minsu of the Human Colonial Defense Corps would show him around different human worlds. Vorthak felt relieved. Finally, he would meet a real human warrior, someone who fit the normal patterns. Captain Ko arrived at the spaceport on a transport ship. He was tall and strong, with short black hair and serious eyes. He wore a military uniform with many medals. This looked right to Vorthak. This was what a warrior caste individual should look like. "Dr. Vorthak," Captain Ko said with a respectful bow. "I am honored to be your guide. Where would you like to go first?" "I want to see how your military works," Vorthak said. "I need to understand your warrior class better." Captain Ko smiled. "Of course. But first, would you like to visit my hometown? My family lives there. You could see how ordinary humans live." Vorthak agreed. Understanding the difference between warriors and civilians was important for his research. They took a short flight to Haven Colony on the planet's northern continent. The ship landed in a small town surrounded by farms and forests. It looked peaceful and quiet, very different from a military base. "This is where I grew up," Captain Ko said as they walked down a tree-lined street. "My sister still lives here." They stopped at a large building made of stone and wood. A sign above the door read, "Haven Colony Library and Learning Center." Inside, books filled tall shelves from floor to ceiling. The air smelled like old paper and flowers. A woman sat behind a wooden desk reading a thick book. She looked up when they entered. She had kind eyes and long black hair tied back in a simple style. She wore a soft blue dress that made her look gentle and scholarly. "Minsu," she said with a bright smile. She stood up and hugged Captain Ko. "You did not tell me you were coming home." "Hyejin, this is Dr. Vorthak from the Galactic Council," Captain Ko said. "He is studying our people. Dr. Vorthak, this is my sister Ko Hyejin. She runs our library." Hyejin bowed politely to Vorthak. "Welcome to Haven Colony. How can I help you understand humans better?" Vorthak looked around the library. This was exactly what he expected from a civilian. Books, learning, peaceful activities. This woman clearly belonged to the intellectual worker class. "Your brother is a soldier," Vorthak said. "You work with books. This is normal. Every species has different types of people who do different jobs." "Yes, Minsu chose the military path," Hyejin said. "But we both learned the same things when we were young." "What do you mean?" Captain Ko sat down in a comfortable chair. "Perhaps I should explain. Dr. Vorthak, what do you think I do in the military? You fight battles. You lead other warriors. You protect the weak civilians." "That is part of it," Captain Ko said. "But I also work in the medical unit. I am a trained nurse who specializes in children's health. When I am not on duty, I teach poetry classes at the base school. Last month I won a cooking competition." Vorthak stared at him. "You are a warrior who cooks?" "Why not?" Captain Ko asked. "Soldiers need to eat good food. Children need to learn about literature. Sick people need medical care. I can do all of these things." This made no sense to Vorthak. In every other species, individuals specialized in one area. Warriors fought, doctors healed, teachers taught. They did not mix these roles. "What about you?" Vorthak asked Hyejin. "You work with books. You must be a peaceful person." Hyejin smiled. "I love books and learning, but I also have other skills." She opened a drawer in her desk and pulled out a data pad. "I hold advanced certifications in 17 different combat specializations." 17? Vorthak's voice went up in surprise. "Close quarters combat, sniper training, explosives handling, survival tactics, interrogation techniques." Hyejin counted on her fingers. "Should I continue?" "But why?" "You are a librarian." "Yes, and I am very good at it," Hyejin said. "But I am also good at other things. Let me show you something." She walked to a table where someone had left a military assault rifle for cleaning. Vorthak wondered why such a weapon was in a library. Hyejin picked up the rifle and began taking it, apart with quick, smooth movements. Her hands moved without hesitation, separating each piece with expert skill. While she worked, she continued talking about library organization. "We recently received a collection of ancient Earth poetry from the 21st century. The emotional depth of the works is fascinating, especially how they reflect the human experience of..." She finished disassembling the rifle and began putting it back together. Her hands never stopped moving, never fumbled, never hesitated. Within minutes, the weapon was fully assembled and ready to use. "The intersection of hope and despair in uncertain times," she finished, setting the rifle down. "Would you like to see the poetry collection?" Vorthak felt dizzy. This gentle librarian had just performed a task that required months of military training, and she had done it while discussing poetry as if both skills were equally natural. "How is this possible?" he asked. "What do you find impossible?" Hyejin asked. "You work with books, but you know how to use weapons like a professional soldier. Brother and sister looked at each other and smiled. All humans learn both, Captain Ko said. When we are children, our parents teach us to read and to fight. We learn to cook food and to make weapons, we study history and tactics, we practice music and combat. But this is inefficient, Vorthak protested. Specialization makes societies stronger. If everyone tries to do everything, no one becomes truly expert at anything. He-Jin walked to a bookshelf and pulled out a thick volume. This is a history of human warfare, she said. Would you like to know who wrote it? Vorthak looked at the author's name. It was He-Jin's name. You wrote a military history book? 3 of them, actually, she said. Understanding the past helps us prepare for the future, both in libraries and in battles. Captain Ko stood up. Dr. Vorthak, you keep trying to separate us into groups. Warrior or civilian, fighter or thinker. But humans do not work that way. Then how do you work? We are complete people, He-Jin said simply. Each of us can create and destroy. Each of us can build and fight. Each of us can teach and learn and protect and heal. Vorthak sat down heavily, in a chair. His understanding of civilization was breaking apart. Everything he had learned about how intelligent species organize themselves seemed wrong when applied to humans. In other species, he said slowly, the warriors protect the civilians support the warriors. Each group depends on the other. But if every human is both, then we depend on ourselves, Captain Ko finished. We do not need someone else to protect us because we can protect ourselves. We do not need someone else to grow our food because we can grow it ourselves. But you still have specialists, Vorthak said, grasping for something familiar. Your sister works in a library. You work in the military. Yes, we choose what we want to focus on, He-Jin said. I prefer books and learning. Minsu prefers military service, but we can do each other's jobs if we need to. This is impossible, Vorthak muttered. Is it? Captain Ko asked. Or is it just different from what you expected? That evening, Vorthak sat in his guest room writing his second report. The more he learned about humans, the less he understood them. They had no clear classes or castes. Every individual seemed capable of multiple roles that should be separate. How could a species function this way? How could they organize society when everyone was trained to be everything? Tomorrow, Captain Ko would take him to see human scientists and engineers. Vorthak hoped these would be normal intellectuals who focused only on learning and discovery, but he was beginning to suspect that human scientists would also know how to fight, and human engineers would also know how to heal, and human artists would also know how to kill. The humans had created something that violated every rule of galactic civilization. They had built a society where every civilian was a potential warrior, and every warrior was also a civilian. This should not work. But somehow, it did. Vorthak looked out his window at the peaceful town below. Lights glowed in houses where families shared quiet evenings together. But now he knew that in every house lived people who could build libraries or destroy armies with equal skill. The question was not just how this was possible. The question was what it meant for the rest of the galaxy. The next morning, Captain Ko took Dr. Vorthak to the new Terra research station. This was where human scientists worked on terraforming technology. They were trying to make dead planets into living worlds where plants could grow and people could live. Surely scientists will be normal, Vorthak thought to himself. Scientists think and study. They do not fight. The research station was a large white building surrounded by glass houses full of green plants. Inside the building, humans in white coats worked at computers and examined samples under microscopes. This looked familiar to Vorthak. Every civilized species had scientists who focused only on learning. Captain Ko led him to a laboratory where a man was working alone among rows of growing plants. The man was not very tall and had gentle hands that moved carefully among the green leaves. He wore thick glasses and had dirt under his fingernails. Dr. Lee Taemin, Captain Ko said. This is Dr. Vorthak from the Galactic Council. He would like to learn about our terraforming work. Dr. Lee looked up from his plants and smiled. He had a kind face and spoke in a soft voice. Welcome, Dr. Vorthak. I am happy to show you what we do here. Finally, Vorthak thought. This human looked exactly like scientists from other species. Quiet, thoughtful, focused on learning rather than fighting. Dr. Lee began explaining his work. He showed Vorthak different plants that could grow in harsh conditions. He talked about soil chemistry and water systems. He explained how they could change the air on dead planets to make it breathable for humans. This is fascinating work, Vorthak said. He felt comfortable for the first time since arriving in human space. You must spend all your time studying plants and chemistry. Most of my time, yes, Dr. Lee said, but I have other interests too. I enjoy studying military history as a hobby, and I practice martial arts to stay healthy. Vorthak's heart sank. Even the gentle scientist had military interests. But surely you focus mainly on peaceful research, Vorthak said hopefully. Of course, Dr. Lee said. Creating life is more interesting than destroying it. Would you like to see my greenhouse? They walked through rows of strange and beautiful plants. Dr. Lee explained how each one had been changed to survive on different worlds. Some could live without much water. Others could grow in cold temperatures. Some could clean poison from the air. These plants are amazing, Vorthak said. You are helping to create new worlds where people can live and grow food. That is the goal, Dr. Lee said proudly. Every seed we plant brings life to places that were dead. Suddenly, alarms began ringing throughout the building. Red lights flashed on the walls. A voice spoke over the communication system. Security breach in Laboratory 7. Unknown intruders in the building. All personnel take cover. Vorthak expected Dr. Lee to run and hide. Scientists were not fighters. They needed warriors to protect them during dangerous situations, but Dr. Lee did not look scared. Instead, he looked annoyed. Excuse me, he said politely to Vorthak. Some people are trying to steal our work. I need to deal with this. Should we call security? Vorthak asked. I am security, Dr. Lee said simply. Dr. Lee walked to a wall panel and pressed his hand against it. The panel opened, revealing weapons and equipment hidden inside. He took out a small device that looked like a garden sprayer. What is that? Vorthak asked. Concentrated plant toxins, Dr. Lee said as he checked the device. Very effective for pest control. You mean insects? Among other things. Dr. Lee also took a pair of thick gloves and a small knife. To Vorthak, these looked like gardening tools. But something about the way Dr. Lee handled them suggested they had other uses. Please stay here, Dr. Lee said. The greenhouse is safe. The security system will protect you. Where are you going? To remove the pests. Dr. Lee left the greenhouse and walked calmly toward the main laboratory building. Vorthak watched through the glass walls, expecting to see the gentle scientist running for help. Instead, he saw something that made his blood freeze. Dr. Lee moved through the building like a predator hunting prey. He did not make noise. He did not hurry. He simply moved from room to room with deadly purpose. The intruders were professional thieves from the Syndicate, a criminal organization that stole technology to sell on the black market. They were trained fighters with advanced weapons and armor, but they had made a mistake. They thought they were stealing from helpless scientists. Vorthak watched in shock as Dr. Lee systematically hunted down each intruder. He used his knowledge of chemistry to create toxic gas that disabled their equipment. He used his understanding of plant biology to make poison that went through their armor. He used the building's ventilation system to move unseen from room to room. The gentle scientist who had been explaining soil chemistry became a deadly hunter who used his laboratory as a weapon. One by one, the intruders fell. Some collapsed from breathing poisonous air. Others found their weapons dissolving from chemical sprays. The few who tried to fight Dr. Lee directly discovered that his hobby of martial arts was more advanced than their military training. The last intruder tried to escape through the greenhouse where Vorthak was hiding. The criminal burst through the door, breathing hard and looking terrified. Dr. Lee appeared behind him like a shadow. In his hands, he held what looked like an ordinary garden sprayer. But Vorthak now knew it contained something much more dangerous than water. Please do not move, Dr. Lee said in his same soft, polite voice. "The chemical in this sprayer will cause permanent nerve damage if it touches your skin." The intruder dropped his weapon and raised his hands. "Excellent," Dr. Lee said. "Security will be here soon to collect you." He turned to Vorthak as if nothing unusual had happened. "I apologize for the interruption. Where were we in our discussion? About soil pH levels?" You just..." Vorthak could not form words. "Dealt with some pests," Dr. Lee said. "It happens sometimes. People try to steal our work, but every garden has pests. You learn to handle them. You killed them using plants." "Not killed. Disabled," Dr. Lee corrected. "Killing is wasteful. Better to neutralize the threat and learn from it. These criminals might have useful information about other planned thefts." Vorthak stared at the gentle scientist who had just defeated trained killers using gardening knowledge and chemistry. "How?" he asked weakly. "Plants can be medicine or poison," Dr. Lee explained. "It depends on how you use them. A scientist who studies life must also understand death. How can you create without understanding destruction?" Security forces arrived and took away the unconscious criminals. Dr. Lee cleaned his equipment and put it back in the hidden panel as if this was routine maintenance. "Now," he said, returning to his plants, "let me show you how we modify root systems to absorb different minerals." That evening, Vorthak sat in his room trying to write his third report. His hands shook as he typed. He had found another human who seemed normal. Dr. Lee was clearly a scientist focused on creating life and growing things. But when threatened, the gentle botanist had become a deadly hunter who used his civilian knowledge as a weapon. The pattern was becoming clear and terrifying. Humans did not just train civilians to fight. They weaponized everything. A farmer used agricultural tools to kill enemies. A librarian used information as a tactical advantage. A scientist used plants and chemistry to disable intruders. Every aspect of human civilization could become a weapon when needed. Vorthak looked at his notes about Dr. Lee. The man spent his days creating life and bringing green growth to dead worlds. But he also knew exactly how to use that same knowledge to bring death to anyone who threatened him. A creator and a destroyer in the same person. A scientist and a warrior using the same skills. Before leaving the research station, Vorthak had met one more human. Professor Choi Subin taught ethics and philosophy at the station's university. She seemed like a peaceful thinker who studied ideas rather than practical things, but something in her eyes suggested that she, too, had hidden depths. Tomorrow, Captain Ko would take him to see human artists and teachers. Vorthak was no longer sure he wanted to know what secrets they might be hiding. The humans were showing him a type of civilization that should not exist. Every individual was a complete person capable of creation and destruction, building and fighting, learning and killing. How was this possible? And what did it mean for the rest of the galaxy? Dr. Vorthak's reports to the Galactic Council caused great alarm. The council members read about farmers who fought like soldiers, librarians who knew 17 ways to kill, and scientists who used plants as weapons. These reports made the council leaders very worried. "This species is too dangerous," said High Counselor Zarian at the emergency meeting. "Every human civilian is also a potential warrior. They have no weakness we can exploit. We should destroy them before they become a threat to galactic peace," said Counselor Vex 9. "If we wait, they might spread to other worlds and teach other species their dangerous ways." The council voted to launch a preemptive strike against Earth. They would attack the humans' homeworld and destroy their military capabilities. Once the human warriors were gone, the peaceful civilians would surrender and accept Galactic Council rule. The plan seemed perfect. The Council's intelligence said that humans kept their military forces on Earth in large bases. The civilians lived in separate cities with no weapons or defenses. The Council would bomb the military bases and leave the civilian areas alone. Without their protectors, the human civilians would have no choice but to give up. 300 warships of the Galactic Council fleet jumped into Earth's solar system. Admiral Zethrak commanded the fleet from his flagship. He had conquered 12 species before and knew how to break a civilization's will to fight. "Target the military installations," Admiral Zethrak ordered. "Destroy their armies but leave the civilian population centers untouched. We want them alive to serve the Council." The fleet's scanners identified what looked like military bases, large buildings with landing pads for ships, training grounds with obstacle courses, weapons storage facilities. These were clearly where the human warriors lived and trained. But something was wrong. The scanners also showed millions of humans, living in what looked like ordinary cities. Small houses in quiet neighborhoods, schools where children learned, shopping centers where people bought food. These areas had no military defenses at all. "This will be easy," Admiral Zethrak said. "The humans separate their warriors from their civilians just like every other species. Destroy the warriors and the civilians become harmless." The fleet began its attack. Powerful energy weapons destroyed the military bases. The human space defense forces fought back, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Within hours, most of Earth's official military was destroyed. Admiral Zethrak smiled. "Now the civilian population will surrender. Send landing troops to the major cities to accept their submission." But when the landing troops arrived at the cities, something unexpected happened. The defenseless civilian areas did not surrender. Instead, they fought back. In the city of New Seoul, elementary school teacher Kim Jae-won gathered his students in the school basement. But he did not hide there waiting for rescue. He had studied military history as a hobby and knew exactly how to organize a defense. "Children, remember what we learned about the great generals of history," he told his students calmly. "Now we will see if you learned those lessons well." The children, who had been taught strategy and tactics alongside reading and math, helped coordinate defensive positions throughout the neighborhood. They used their knowledge of their own streets and buildings to set up ambushes and escape routes. When the Galactic Council troops arrived expecting to find scared civilians, they instead found a well-organized resistance that knew the terrain perfectly. In the restaurant district, small business owner Yoon Hae-na closed her food shop and opened her weapons cache. She had learned to use knives for cooking, but knives could cut more than vegetables. Her neighbors, other shop owners, mechanics, and office workers joined her in defending their street. "We protect what we built," Hae-na said as she checked her equipment. "No one takes our home." The alien troops had expected to face professional soldiers with military weapons. Instead, they fought ordinary people who used everything around them as weapons. Kitchen knives became deadly blades. Cooking fires became sources of burning oil. Even the food itself became dangerous when Hae-na used her knowledge of spices and chemistry to create choking gas. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, retired accountant Lim Dong-wook became the local commander. His boring job had taught him about organization and supply lines. His hobby of studying historical battles had taught him about strategy and tactics. "Mrs. Park, take your gardening club and set up positions on the north side," he said calmly, into his radio. "Mr. Kim, your mechanic friends need to block the main road with disabled vehicles. Everyone else remember the plan we practiced." The Galactic Council troops could not understand what they were facing. These were supposed to be civilians, ordinary people who grew food, taught children, and fixed machines. But they fought with the coordination of trained soldiers and the desperation of people defending their homes. The alien forces had been trained to fight armies, not entire populations. They expected to find military bases with clear targets. Instead, they found that every house was a fortress and every human was a defender. Admiral Zethrak watched in horror as his reports came in. The civilian population was not surrendering. They were fighting back with skills and weapons that should not exist. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our intelligence said these were non-combatant civilians." "Sir," his tactical officer said, nervously, "it appears that human civilians are also trained for combat." "All of them?" "It seems that way, sir. We are taking heavy casualties in every landing zone." The battle for Earth was not going as planned. The Galactic Council had expected to fight a human military and then rule over helpless civilians. Instead, they found themselves fighting an entire species. Every human settlement became a battlefield. Every human civilian became a combatant. The invaders faced an enemy that did not distinguish between soldier and citizen, because no such distinction existed. Schools became command centers, hospitals became weapons factories, shopping centers became fortified positions. The humans used their civilian infrastructure as military assets because they had designed it that way from the beginning. Children who had been taught mathematics used their knowledge to calculate weapon trajectories. Teachers who had studied history used their knowledge to plan battles. Doctors who had learned to heal also knew how to harm. The worst part for the Galactic Council forces was that the humans enjoyed advantages the aliens had never considered. They knew every street, every building, every hiding place. They could communicate through networks the aliens could not intercept. They had supplies hidden in places that looked like ordinary houses. Most importantly, they were fighting for their home. The Galactic Council troops were far from their own worlds, following orders they did not fully understand. The humans were defending everything they had built and everyone they loved. Admiral Zethrak realized his mistake too late. He had planned to fight a human military and then rule over human civilians. But there was no difference between the two. Every human was both. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. The humans want to negotiate." Finally, Admiral Zethrak said with relief, "They are ready to surrender." "No, sir," the officer said quietly. "They are offering us terms for our surrender." Admiral Zethrak stared at the message in disbelief. The humans were winning. His superior fleet was being defeated by a species that had no separate warrior class because every individual was a warrior. The invasion of Earth had failed. The Galactic Council had learned a terrible lesson about human civilization. There were no civilians to conquer because there were no civilians at all. Every human was a potential soldier. Every human settlement was a potential fortress. Every human skill could become a weapon when needed. The Council had tried to destroy the human military and rule over harmless civilians. But they discovered that with humans, the military and civilians were the same people. The war was over. The Galactic Council had lost to a species that should not have been able to exist according to every rule of civilized warfare. It was time to negotiate with people who had shown that they could not be conquered because they could not be separated from their own defense. The failed invasion led to a ceasefire. Both sides agreed to stop fighting and start talking. The humans had proven they could not be conquered by force. The Galactic Council had learned that their understanding of civilization was incomplete. Professor Choi Soo-bin, the ethics philosopher Dr. Vorthak had briefly met, became humanity's chief negotiator. She arrived at the neutral space station where the peace talks would happen. With her came a small team that included Dr. Vorthak, who now served as an advisor to both sides. The Galactic Council sent their best diplomats, High Counselor Zarion, Admiral Zethrak, and several other leaders who had never expected to be negotiating with the species they had tried to destroy. Professor Choi looked like a typical academic. She wore simple clothes and carried books instead of weapons. She spoke quietly and chose her words carefully, but everyone in the room now knew that appearances meant nothing when dealing with humans. "We are here to discuss peace," Professor Choi said as the talks began. "But first we must understand why this war happened." "Your species is dangerous," High Counselor Zarion said bluntly. "Every human civilian is also a potential warrior. This violates the natural order of civilized society." "What natural order?" Professor Choi asked. "Strong individuals become warriors and protect the weak. Weak individuals become workers and support the strong. Smart individuals become leaders and guide everyone else. This is how all civilized species organize themselves." Professor Choi smiled gently. "And you believed that humans must follow this same pattern?" "All intelligent species do," Admiral Zethrak said. "It is the only way to build a stable civilization." "Is it?" Professor Choi asked. "Dr. Vorthak, you have studied our people for several months. What have you observed?" Dr. Vorthak stood up slowly. His time with humans had changed. His understanding of everything he thought he knew about civilization Humans do not separate their population into castes, he said. Every individual is trained to perform multiple roles. They can create and destroy, build and fight, teach and kill. This should not work according to everything we know about social organization. But it does work, Professor Choi said. Why do you think that is? The Galactic Council representatives looked confused. They had come expecting to negotiate with a defeated enemy. Instead, they were being given a lesson in philosophy. Your species is an anomaly, High Counselor Zerion said. You break the rules that govern all other civilized life. Or perhaps, Professor Choi said, your rules are incomplete. She stood up and walked to a large window that showed the stars outside. Let me tell you a story about human evolution. Long ago, our ancestors lived on a dangerous world. They faced predators, natural disasters, disease, and constant threats to their survival. This is true for many species, Admiral Zethrak said. Yes, but most species solved this problem by developing specialists. Some individuals became very good at fighting. Others became very good at finding food. Others became very good at making tools. Each individual focused on one skill and depended on others for everything else. This is efficient, High Counselor Zerion said. Specialization makes societies stronger. It can, Professor Choi agreed. But it also creates weakness. What happens when the fighters are killed? What happens when the food finders cannot find food? What happens when the tool makers are captured? The specialists support each other, Dr. Vorthak said. But what if they cannot? What if the group is scattered? What if individuals must survive alone? The room was quiet as the council representatives thought about this. Humans evolved differently, Professor Choi continued. Our ancestors faced a world where survival required every individual to be capable of everything. We could not afford to have people who could only fight or only find food or only make tools. Every person had to be able to do all of these things. This seems inefficient, Admiral Zethrak said. In a stable environment, yes, Professor Choi said. But Earth was not stable. Humans learned to be adaptable rather than specialized. We learned to be complete individuals rather than partial people who needed others to survive. Dr. Vorthak began to understand. So human civilization is built on individuals who can function independently. Exactly, Professor Choi said. We work together by choice, not by necessity. We support each other because we want to, not because we have to. But this makes your entire species dangerous, High Counselor Zerion protested. If every human can fight, then every human is a potential threat. Yes, Professor Choi said simply. And if every human can build, then every human is a potential ally. If every human can think, then every human is a potential teacher. If every human can create, then every human is a potential partner. She returned to the table and sat down. You see only the warrior in us because that is what you feared. But we are also farmers and artists and healers and scientists. We are everything that humans can be. Admiral Zethrak leaned forward. How do we know you will not use your abilities to conquer others? The same way you know that your own warriors will not turn against you, Professor Choi said. You trust in the values and goals that guide their actions. What are human values? Dr. Vorthak asked. Professor Choi thought for a moment. We believe that everyone should have the chance to grow and learn and become the best version of themselves. We believe that diversity makes us stronger. We believe that problems are solved better when many minds work together. But you also believe in fighting when necessary, High Counselor Zerion said. Yes, Professor Choi said without hesitation. We believe that good people must be willing to fight against evil. We believe that those who can protect others have a duty to do so. We believe that freedom is worth defending. So every human is a warrior and a protector. Every human is a person who can choose to fight when fighting is needed. But we prefer to build rather than destroy. We prefer to create rather than kill. We prefer to teach rather than conquer. Dr. Vorthak spoke up. Professor Choi, in my final report, how should I classify humanity? Professor Choi smiled. Create a new category. Call us what we are: complete people. Individuals who can be whatever the situation requires. Humans who are simultaneously civilian and warrior, creator and destroyer, student and teacher. The peace talks continued for several days. In the end, the Galactic Council agreed to recognize humanity as a new kind of civilization. They created the classification omnicaste species for races that did not separate their population into specialized groups. Humans were granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with one important understanding. Every human diplomat, scientist, or artist would be treated as a potential military threat, not because humans were evil, but because they were complete. Dr. Vorthak returned to his homeworld to write his final report. He had learned that the galaxy was larger and more diverse than anyone had imagined. Humanity had shown that there were other ways to build civilization. His last entry read, "Recommendation: never underestimate a species that teaches its children to garden and fight with equal dedication. In humanity, we have encountered the only sapient race where asking, 'Are you a civilian or a soldier?' is meaningless. The answer is always yes. Humans are not an anomaly. They are an evolution. They represent what intelligent life becomes when every individual must be capable of surviving alone while choosing to work together. They are dangerous because they are complete. They are valuable because they are adaptable. The galaxy is a better place with humans in it, even if they make the rest of us uncomfortable. Sometimes being uncomfortable helps us grow." Dr. Vorthak closed his report and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans were building new worlds and creating new art and solving new problems. They were also ready to fight, if fighting became necessary. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Strength did not come from specialization alone. Sometimes it came from being complete.